Hi, I'm Ben, and welcome to Field and Foley, episode 27. Meet Lewis Thompson, music composer, sound designer, let's just say master of all things audio. From strumming his first guitar at the age of 11 to crafting immersive soundscapes for indie games and cinematic titles like The Quarry and As Dusk Falls, Lewis is a prominent figure in the UK game dev community, organizing meetups and events. And on top of all that, he founded a social platform for audio people called Airwiggles. So hi Lewis, welcome to the show.
Hi Ben, that is amazing. You know more about me than I do.
I
You've
try
done your
my
research.
best.
Thank you very much. No, it's lovely to be here, and lovely to see you.
Yeah, lovely to see you too. So let's get right into the meat of the things, because Airwiggles, everybody's talking about Airwiggles, hopefully.
Especially me. I don't stop talking about
you.
it. Yeah.
No, but I myself as well. Like every time I meet audio people and they don't know it, I'm like, oh, you should join. It's so cool, because it's like, yeah, it's a social media without the ads, and it's just sound people. Everyone is lovely. So So the first question I have is, why did you start Airwiggles? What compelled you to do this?
Well, if I go really far back, well, not really far back, but maybe like a year before we started it. So some people don't know this, but Airwiggles is still very new. It's only about, as of right now, about a year and a half old since we first made the beta version of a website. And we released fully just over a year ago. So it's still very, very new. And I have to say, I've always been, and I think a lot of people in audio are like this, you're probably the same starting a podcast. I was doing my work and I loved my work, but I didn't really have any side projects. I was so used to constantly doing something with my time all the time, but I was feeling itchy for the last couple of years. I was like, I really want to have a thing, like a side project or something I can build and evolve over time. And I have hobbies and stuff, but I felt myself missing it. I think I was so used to doing extra work and stuff. I was working so hard when I was freelancing that when I started doing my full-time job at Soundcuts, I just felt like, I feel like I could do something else, and I was itching about it for ages. And my good friend Greg Lester, who was your very first podcast guest, I believe, he just chatted to me one day, and Greg's an absolute maniac when it comes to starting projects and doing all these things. He has the most ridiculous work ethic I've ever seen of anyone ever. And I was chatting to him about it, and he just called me one day being like, have you noticed that Twitter is kind of rubbish now? Not disrespecting Twitter, but I agree. We both kind of realized that just scrolling through our Twitter, because both Greg and I only use it for business, for game audio or audio work. We only follow people we know in audio, and yet still when you scroll through Twitter, it's just 1 in every 30 posts is relevant to you. You know, it's just suggested posts or politics or things I don't care about. And it was Greg's idea, to be fair. It was all his initial idea. About he found this kind of platform he could use to maybe try something out, and we thought, why not? Let's give it a go and see if people like it. Probably not, let's be honest. Who's going to have the time to open a whole nother tab or to check something which is another version of social media which so many people already have? And we tried it, and it started slow. It started just me and Greg talking to each other publicly to make it look like people were using it, but it just started growing and growing and growing, and it's still going now. And I think it's got to a point of the last 3 months or so where we can kind of step back a little bit and watch it go and do its own thing and flourish, and people seem to be taking care of it ourselves without us doing too much more added work to it, which is awesome. It's a really lovely thing to see. Sorry, I've got a bit distracted with that answer, but yes, that's how it came about. It was mainly Greg's idea, but we just started it small, and it just grew and grew, way bigger than we could have imagined, and it's still growing now, hopefully.
Yeah, that's totally fine going on a tangent like that, because it's the same for me. I was thinking, I saw this Airwiggles post by pure chance, and I thought do you want another social media?
Yeah.
And I was like, yeah, let's check it out. I mean, it's for audio people. I'm an audio person, and like you said, I didn't use Twitter that much, just for essentially having an address people could DM me, because some people were just on Twitter and on Facebook, and I despise Facebook, so at least that I had to keep open. But and I checked it out, and I was like, let's just make an account. And I checked it I don't know, once a month or something for the first 3 months. Mm-hmm. But it grew on me as well, and because I've seen, just like you said, the community really taken to it and starting their own things, and then you started the things with the sound design showdown, for example, which was so much fun.
That was fun. It was so much work.
I thought I didn't have time for it, but I kind of made time for it, and it was so much fun to do that. And seeing you, just like you said, seeing you putting so much time and effort into it makes it really worthwhile. So maybe in your words, what do you think, what makes Airwiggles special?
It is is such a cliche answer. It's me. No, I'm kidding. It's not me at all. It's for community. Again, I'm sure you've spoke about it a million times on your podcast. The game audio community is the nicest community ever. Airwiggles isn't just like specifically game audio, but it's definitely the majority right now, just because that's what me and Greg are. But the people are so lovely. Everyone's so friendly. When people post, questions asking, maybe beginner questions or maybe questions people have heard several times, people don't like roll their eyes or like think, go on, scroll down and read other posts. People are so kind. If someone posts their work, the feedback's always really lovely. It's always like something positive and then something to improve, but something positive to finish. It's all... I've honestly never really had any bad experiences with people. I was kind of worried we'd have to do a lot of moderating and like making sure people aren't being mean or there's any spam or anything, but people just are lovely in the industry. It's such a nice vibe, and I think that carries it because we don't have to do that much really. Like the people just that use the website are so kind, and it makes the whole place so wholesome, and it just means it's a nice place to go. I would love to say that I did it all under Mastermind, but really, like if it was any other industry, I feel like it wouldn't be anywhere near as successful as it is. So yeah, credit to the community. If you're listening to this and you're on Airwiggles and you post stuff regularly, then thank you very much, because it really does make a world of difference. We really appreciate it.
I have a theory, because I think the sound community is so good because we really know how to listen.
That's true. That's good.
No, but it's the same for me. Like I have met so many cool people. I've met Sergio Ronchetti, for example, which was in episode 22, and I then saw that he made like Fmod videos, and I was working with Fmod, so I was like, oh, let's check this out, and it was like, oh, it's so cool, like very short videos to the point, not like many other tutorials on YouTube on different topics. That was like really catched me, and we got to talking, and then I invited him in the show, and then I asked him like out of the blue one night about a problem I had, and he was so kind to just send me like I think 3 voice messages, like 2 minutes each, with detailed instructions on how to fix my problem, and it fixed my problem. So it's just so amazing, and I'm trying to take at least a bit of time out of the month to always check through things and answer to people that I don't know, they want feedback, or if I see a question I can answer, I try to just put it in there to be part of the community.
I mean, so many steps of my like journey into audio, I can like trace back to key points where I got advice from someone currently in the industry, which was so helpful or vital to like my own kind of career progression. Like it would be so difficult. I mean, it's such a hard industry to get into anyway. It would be so much harder if there weren't people like able to give support like that. I've almost everyone I know at some point when they were starting out has reached out to someone or spoke to someone or sent a cold email, like just asking for advice or feedback or whatever, or they did a mentorship program, or they just did anything, and people replied to them and took the time to give them, good feedback and really helpful like advice to getting into the industry. And I think the whole industry at the moment, it seems like this whole generation of audio designers and game audio is just like built on they had someone help them get into it, and now they're keen to pay it back forward, which is really, really lovely. Again, I could gush about it for ages. It's so wholesome.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, the audio industry the audio field has broadened so much over the many years that it has existed, and it reminds me a bit of the programming, because when I started out with programming, I learned programming at like right after school. I learned it professionally, and in the beginning there was just like, of course, in the very beginning, there was just programming, nothing else. And then it started with like stuff like, oh, you have this kind of language, or you have databases, and now you have big data, you have AI, you have so many fields. And I think nowadays, even in the audio industry, you have so many things that I, for example, have no idea how to do. I have no idea how to like mix for Dolby Atmos, for example, or for cinema kind of things, or for mobile games, for example. Never did one, so I have no idea what kind of challenges I have to try to fit it so that it sounds good on a little speaker. And there's so many intricacies. So yeah, it's really cool to see it like flourish and go all the different ways, because when I started, I was thinking like, do I really want to get into this industry, which is like, you have so many people and so few jobs. But I'm pretty much hoping or guessing that you can find your kind of niche and your kind of place in there, because it's just spreading out and technology evolves. So and speaking about the audio field, I have one thing I saw on your website, that you did VO directing, and as I wanted to do in the show is to show to like newcomers to the audio field what we do. So first of all, VO for the people that don't know is voiceover. So of course the people that do the voices for characters in video games or even for movies, for animated movies, for example. But what is the job of a VO director? What do you do when you are a VO director?
Yes, so I will preface this with I am a very new VO director. I don't do very much of it, but my boss, Adele Cutting, is the most amazing VO director, and I've been lucky enough to be in sessions with her, like seeing how she does it. And when Adele is busy, basically, and we need a bit of VO direction done, I've done a little bit myself as well. But yeah, it's basically just getting the most out of actors in a recording session. For me, and Adele does both in person and Zoom direction. But for me, I mainly do it remotely over Skype or Zoom or something. I'll be on a call with a studio or in an act with a home studio, and they'll have their lines, we'll have a video to go to, etc. But each line they give, I'll just be there to basically quality check it, direct it basically. Sometimes they'll save a line, but it could be, a bit faster. It could be have more of a certain kind of emotion. It could be happier. They could maybe put in a bit of laughing at the beginning end, or just like anything really. It's one of those things, right? With video directing, I found personally, it's such a hard thing to describe what to do to someone that maybe, because someone that's very nervous about doing it for the first time. I don't really have any solid advice except that you'll kind of know when you hear something that isn't correct. And then you'll be able to adjust accordingly. It's kind of for me anyway, it's kind of a bit like second nature. There's a little voice in my head that suggests what they just said isn't quite right. And I'll just do my very best to put it into words on a day. And sometimes it involves me doing a really terrible impression. I've done plenty of those. Sometimes it's you end up saying things like, yeah, it's great, but can you make it sexier? And it sounds kind of, I don't know how you do that, but luckily these amazing actors can kind of take that direction and put it into performance. Yeah, sometimes it's more technical stuff, we need to make it shorter, we need to make sure we hit all these sync points, we need to make sure it's really loud, no whispery, less dynamic range. But for the most part, it's kind of, make it happier, maybe add less inflection, maybe don't raise the pitch of your voice at the end, to sound like a question. I really can't give you any solid advice other than you kind of, I think just, even though it's really difficult to believe in yourself when you're kind of quite new at it, if you trust yourself that what you think is probably right, because you know more about the game than the voice actor probably, you kind of know what it's going to be for, how it's going to be implemented, and just stick to that and fake it till you make it in terms of confidence, and hopefully get through to the end of the session. Yeah, the voice directing I did the voice direction for the cutscenes on the game called I Am Fish, which is kind of the biggest one I did. And we had two amazing actors who did multi voices, so they did 2 fish each. And they were making just these non-verbal emotes, kind of just blah, 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 all that kind of stuff. They did a much better job than I just did then.
Yeah.
And it seems ridiculous being yeah, that was great, but can you try making it a bit more of a laughy kind of blah, 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 blah. But they just smash it. So yeah, working with a good voice actor really helps, I have to say.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's probably all I have to say about that.
That's awesome. Yeah. Yeah, I've seen footage and I've heard voices from the game, and it sounds pretty funny. So yeah, it's a lot about gut feeling, I guess. But I'm also guessing, just like you said, you somehow know if it's right or not, and I think the same is true for when you're watching a movie or something, and when you hear something that's not right, a sound that doesn't fit or something. Sometimes it's by choice, and then later on you're like, oh yes, because it was a dream or something like that, and it's oh, that was clever. It's all some kind of weird noises that don't fit. But sometimes it's just when you realize, okay, they didn't either have the time or they did a bad job at the soundscape, and it doesn't fit. It just doesn't feel right. And yeah, that's kind of I'm guessing that's kind of a thing always for sound, because just like you said, what words can you use to describe? I have so many things where it's oh yeah, make it sound like I want to make it sound like it's like crystals, and it's not like crystals. Crystals don't sound like that. But I'm guessing this is this kind of dreamy bell-like sound or something. But yeah, as soon as you start to describe and try to describe the very specific things you do, it's yeah, you can just resort to making noises with your mouth, which I also do a lot. Yeah,
there's totally loads of times I've given feedback to my team members, and they've they've done exactly what I asked, but I've just realized that what I asked wasn't what I meant. And like, I'm really sorry about this. Like, try it again, the complete opposite of what I just said. Trust me. I'm sorry for making you spend an hour on that. Yeah, it's tricky. And it's funny because like I'm sure audio designers have had strange feedback in the past, like make it sound more purple or something like this. You kind of, I guess half of the skill is learning what that actually means and what the clients actually want. And it's the same for us when we're directing or giving feedback to other audio people, I suppose.
Yeah, most definitely. And but like, do you think by being like a sound designer and sound implementer and all the other things you do in sound, you do everything in sound. So it's crazy what you all do. But it's like, do you think it helps because you know how these lines will then be implemented, how the game feels, how you edit them? Is it like something where it's like, oh, this helps me direct better, or is it just all that stuff is in your head and it's way too much to keep track of?
Yeah, so it definitely does help, although I don't think about it all the time. So it's not like I'm constantly scanning through all these things in my mind. Like, you kind of, when you see it, you'll know when it's wrong, if that makes sense. It's kind of like, I know music theory, but I don't really think about it all the time when writing music or composing or playing something. But if I do something wrong, because of that kind of previous knowledge I'll be able to be like, that was wrong, here's why, here's how to fix it, if that makes sense. So it's hard to think of an example with video directing, but like, it could be something like as simple as a voice actor might not know how to pronounce one of a character names. So you've been pronouncing with the dev team the entire time, so you know it like the back of your hand, but you didn't even think to write it down. When you hear a voice actor say it incorrectly, you're like, oh, hold on, that's wrong. It might be the case where you ask a voice actor to do some variants, they might just do the exact same thing in the exact same delivery 6 times, which isn't really what you need. Obviously, we know that we need variants to kind of avoid repetitiveness, or in some cases anyway, whereas they might be thinking they just want to do the exact same thing 3 times for safety, like they would on, say, a film set. So yes, it definitely does help. It's hard to think of an example, so I'm sorry I can't give anything more than that. But hopefully that makes sense.
And yeah, just going from the VO directing to the next step, like when you have the dialogue, then there is this thing that's called dialogue editing.
Yes.
What exactly do you do with the dialogue? Because as far as I'm aware from people that I talk to, they pretty much, if they already know that movies are not the sound you see on the cinema, and that a lot of even the dialogue is maybe done afterwards in the studio again, if they at least know that, then they think like, oh, the actor just comes in and they go through the movie and they record everything and then they just slap it on there and that's it.
Yeah.
So maybe you can clarify.
Yeah, of course. So yeah, dialogue editing is quite a broad term, I suppose. There's quite a lot to it. And whenever we do dialogue editing for a client, what they actually ask for can differ quite a lot. Sometimes they want like the basics, which is just they take when we get supplied dialogue, it's probably going to be one really long WAV file with all the takes in it, probably like, an hour long or whatever long the session was. And it's got all these different clips of dialogue throughout, maybe marked with markers or something. But the first step is taking all these clips of dialogue and cutting them into individual files so that they can trigger in game. So, if you want to trigger, someone, saying a line, we don't want to have to like seek to a minute 33, 15 seconds of this massive WAV file. So we cover them all individually and give them appropriate file names as well. So it's clear and concise what they actually are. Not just that, we top and tail them. So we make sure the start and ends like don't have any clips or clicks or anything like that. That's normally just like putting a fade in and fade out, etc. So far, pretty straightforward. You can do it in Reaper very, very quickly. The next kind of step is kind of more time consuming. And there are some shortcuts about it, but kind of like cleaning up the dialogue. And by that, I mean declicking, de-plosives, de-noise, de-hum, all that stuff. Basically, when you have actors that give you, no matter how good the microphone quality is, their voice is going to sound a little bit clicky. Mine probably sounds quite clicky because I'm quite thirsty right now. And so what I typically do is I go into, I actually use Pro Tools at the moment for this, unbelievably, despite the fact
Horrible.
I'm not gonna say my thoughts about it, but it's not my favorite DAW, but I quite like, and this is a technique Adele Cutting taught me, which was using the pencil tool to kind of draw out like visible clicks in waveforms destructively. That's something you can't actually do in Reaper, or at least not without like external tools, etc. So that's quite a nice way of doing it without having to rely on, say, RxD Click. Because I found that if you use something like RxD Click, which is an amazing tool, if you use it too much, it can like declick things that aren't supposed to be declicked. Like if like the sound of a T, like a t-t-t, that might get declicked. It might become artifacty. It might just not sound as good. Going through it manually with a pencil tool, whilst a bit more old-fashioned, does generally yield better and at least more human, more realistic results. But also things like, if someone kicks the mic, if someone makes a plosive like a p or a b into the microphone, I don't even have a pop filter on this, so that definitely came through. We can fix those, we can fix clipping, we can fix, if there's noise in the background, etc. All that stuff, that can take a long time. It depends on the recording quality, and it just depends on the actor. Even some actors, they just are clicky. I don't really know why or how. Random side note as a tip, if you're going to be doing some voice directing or going to be doing some voice acting, eat an apple about half an hour before recording. You become way less clicky, and I really wish I did that now. I'm just so noticing how clicky I probably am. But yeah, and then the very last step of dialogue editing, I suppose, would be, again, if you need to, is leveling everything, maybe processing, adding reverbs, adding whatever you would need to the files. At least leveling, you can go through and make each file, minus 24 LUFS or whatever it needs to be. Got to be a bit careful with that, because you can't really batch it really, because if you have like a single line which is about 3 milliseconds long, it's going to be normalized way louder than a long line. But there's ways you can go about it, ways you can do it quickly. And then you give it back to the client and they add it into the game, or you add it into the game yourself. But that's the dialogue editing process.
Yeah, that's so cool. I mean, I really like talking about that thing, and I can about those kind of things, and I can always see people like getting big eyes, like, oh, good, that sounds like a lot of work, and it's like, yeah, and that's just like the editing. Like, you also have to have the voice actor that records then, and you have the people that have to write the lines, and then you have the people that have to integrate it into the game, and then you only have sound into the game. You don't have visuals at all, and then people start to realize how big of an undertaking video games are, which is hopefully getting more and more into the mainstream. Like knowledge that it's so massive. Like, every game is a miracle essentially. Like, if it's not like a very small indie project, like I would say like a 1-year project or something, everything else is just so much work. It's so much work.
Everything's a miracle, to be honest. I don't know how they get made.
Yeah.
And you were saying earlier about, you don't know, like, there's so much you don't know about audio. Like, there's so much I don't know about audio as well. Like, all the programming side or the game engine side, like, it's just foreign to me. I don't really understand anything apart from the basics. I don't know, when a bug comes in, I'm like, what am I looking at here? How do games get made? What does this code mean? Yeah, it is a miracle.
Yeah, it's also so fun to see, like, when you're on a big project, to see that it's like about 90% of the development time, it's just a broken mess. It's just some characters running around. Sometimes you see something that could resemble a game, but it's just a tech demo. And then hopefully at the end it all comes together and feels good, or it doesn't. But it's like, so for so long it's just not a game, and then at one point you're like, oh shit, I think we got a game there. I think it feels like a game now, which is, yeah, it's so crazy. And that's also the thing. Like, when you see a trailer for a game, when you're really excited about it, and then you get like this, oh, the game doesn't come out this year, it comes out next year, and people are getting pissed. I'm like, oh man, people, don't get pissed. Like, give them time. I'm pretty sure they know what they're doing. I'm pretty sure they know that's not a game yet. It's like, do you want a broken mess? Then like, ask for it sooner, but like, give them time.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, so essentially, as I said already in the intro, you're doing like many things. You're doing like sound effects, you're doing music, you're doing audio integration, dialogue editing, VO directing. Do you have any preferences? Anything where it's like, oh, this one is my favorite, or do you like the different things?
I definitely do. I think I definitely, maybe not as definitely anymore. At heart, I am a composer. It's my favorite thing to do. However, I am best at sound design. I think, like a lot of people in audio, I started as a kind of composer, producer in my bedroom, making tracks. And I wanted to get into audio in some form, and then I kind of like got more into sound design. Even my first job at Soundguts was as an assistant composer. I was working on a TV show called Pinky Malinky as an assistant composer. And to be honest, I didn't know that much sound design at the time. I could do a little bit. I did some at uni. But when I started doing bits of sound design at Soundcuts, I feel like the stuff I was making wasn't very good. It was eventually with the help of everyone on the team, but like I was struggling a little bit the first kind of 6 months. But then I just got more and more into it, and I think I I still definitely have imposter syndrome, as does everyone. But I think at some point for me, within the first kind of 2-3 years of Soundcast, it just kind of clicked that like sound design felt more natural to me. Like my kind of first thought about how things should sound generally ended up like being okay. And so like I could kind of just like trust myself that whatever the sound design task was, I could probably get something there in the end. And I think because of that mind shift, like I still love writing music and I still do write music for Soundcast occasionally. Like it's probably more of a challenge for me right now. And so I've just kind of naturally fallen more into sound design. But to be fair, like like you said, I do a lot. I do sound design, I do music still. I do a lot of music kind of like supervision or editing, that kind of thing. So like in the Quarry, for instance, like myself as well as Adele and a guy named Chris Randall did all the music implementation for that, which would basically stemmed from taking Ian Livingston, who was the composer. He supplied us with like all these music tracks and stems, but he supplied us with about maybe 90 minutes of music. But the actual game was 15 hours long. And so what we ended up doing was taking each bit of stem he had and kind of almost remixing a lot of his stuff into our own horror tracks. But it's a bit like composing with like Apple loops. Like we just took all of his stuff and we arranged it in ways. Maybe we did some pitch shifting of different elements, or we sped things up to match different tracks together to make our own soundtrack that dynamically reacted to the game and all the choices, etc. So that was like, it felt as close to music composition as you can get without actually composing any music. So I did that for like almost 2 years. And then even now, like I won't say the game I'm working on, but like I'm doing a lot of kind of music sourcing from libraries, like licensed music and editing that kind of stuff into loops and dynamic switches and stuff. So I do a lot, but yeah, I definitely, sound design is what I'm best at, I think is fair to say, followed by music, and then dialogue, video direction, all the other stuff probably comes in third place, I suppose. I would love to get back into music. I have to say, like it's one of those things, like I'm so busy all the time, but maybe once a year I'll have like a couple weeks where I get really into the music train again, and I'm really making stuff late at night. I end up like, I just, for some reason I decide I'm going to open Logic at 1 a.m. and then it's like 5 a.m. and I'm like, that was fun though, but I shouldn't have done that. And I'm currently in that phase right now, so I'm very tired all the time.
Yeah, I can absolutely relate. With that. I mean, I've started also with like making music and realizing through that process of learning how to mix and master and do all that stuff that actually sound design is what I really like. But now and again, I'm like, I really want to just make some beats and some rhythms and some ambient loops and something and play around with it. And just like you said, and then it's like 4 or 5 a.m. and it's like, oh fuck, the whole night I spent like playing around making music. But I mean, sometimes even I have all these things lying around, and yeah, there comes a time when I have a project where it's like, I think I made something. So it's not lost time, let me tell you. You will have stuff for different projects in the future. Yeah,
totally. And I try to merge them now. So at the moment, like the music I've been making late at night in my spare time, which is clearly a bad use of my time in terms of the sleep I'm getting, but like I'm learning how to use Faceplant properly, and so I'm using that all the time basically, and so it is helpful. I think it's probably a good idea overall, but I probably should do it at a more reasonable time. Yeah, there's so much stuff to learn. Any bit of audio work I'm happy doing because I learn so much from it. Yeah,
and it all informs each other's like areas. Like also with the integration, I just started integration like half a year ago, or maybe a bit longer. But fortunately, I have this programming background, so I know like I actually can sometimes even fix bugs. But it's it informs this, and it informs the sound design, and it all like flows into each other, and it's really nice to see a broader and broader picture as you go and learn stuff. You mentioned the Quarry, and I wanted to speak to you about your work on the Quarry, because I really enjoyed it. Actually, it's like it has like this, I don't know, this old school horror movie feeling from my teen years. So I really enjoyed playing through it. It has bad things, it has good things, but I must say like the sound was pretty good. So I really enjoyed.
I'll take it.
Yeah. No, I mean like, I would say really good. Sorry.
I'm kidding. I know, I'm kidding.
No, it was really good. I had some qualms with some parts, but I think it was more the voice acting. But so how did you enjoy the work on the Quarry? Was it like a big thing where it's like, oh fuck, we have this massive project? Because they were like, it was like a I would say AA or AAA title. Was it a AAA title?
I think it falls in AAA. I think personally
right.
it was.
Yeah,
I loved it actually. It was really good fun. It was a lot of work, as is everything I seem to be doing. I just come on here talking about how busy I am all the time. It was a lot of work. I think pre the Quarry, at my work at Soundcuts, I was very much on many projects at the same time for short periods of time. Like I was doing kind of things like, I was working on 5 projects a week, doing one per day. I was doing, probably, honestly, this isn't a brag, but I probably have about like 50 game credits to my name now, just because I spend so little time on the projects I do work on. Because I'm kind of like the fire putter outer at Soundcuts. I help people with whatever task that needs doing. But then the Quarry was different because that was the first time I was really on a project for a long period of time. And I was on it for about maybe 2 years straight, with maybe a couple breaks here and there on other stuff. Nice. But about 2 years, other people in the team were on it for longer. So that was a challenge. And I definitely found it a challenge because the Quarry was so realistic in terms of the art style, the audio direction. A lot of the stuff I was working previously was very much kind of cartoony, or like Shaun the Sheep we worked on, or Pinky and Blinky, or some of the games I was doing were like mobile games, or these things of like cartoon characters. And so it was a bit of a tonal shift. But it was great. And I mentioned earlier that I did some of the music editing for it. That was my favorite part. That was so much fun. Like, again, it just was like composing music to the game using, I say composing in quotes, using Ian Livingstone's work. He made such amazing music for the game. And so it was just so honestly so easy, just like taking what he made and making it sound great, because he gave us such good stuff to start with. I loved the team. Greg Lessett, obviously, Oliver Dell Cutting, and again, shout outs to like Chris Jolly, our lead, and Chris Rounder, who was helping me as well, and other people on the team as well. I'm forgetting. It was just a really lovely experience doing the audio, and we did everything. Like we did. So I did music editing for basically the entire game, like with someone else. Like we covered the entire game. I did a lot of the Foley stuff, which
nice.
Covers Field and Foley. Greg was mainly the Foley person, but I did a little bit of it on it as well. I did a lot of sound effects. Spoilers for the Quarry, there are some monsters in it, and I did a lot of the vocalizations for the monsters.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, including recording my own voice in some cases and kind of processing it, which again was super fun. I didn't do any dialogue editing, actually. That was done by other people in the team, but we did do that as a company. Yeah, it was just like a full production. It was huge. It took a lot of time, but it was really, really fun. It was great. Do you have any specific questions about it? Because I can talk about it for ages, but I don't want to go off on a tangent too hard.
No, I don't have any specifics. Just like I said, I really enjoyed the overall feel. And just like you said, like the music, the dynamic music was really, really... It worked like a score to a movie. It didn't... At the time, I wasn't aware about the intricacies of like dynamic music when I played it. And I just enjoyed the game. I was like, it was like a really... like a cinematic feeling. So that... Well done on that front.
Thank you. It's funny, right? I got a funny story, right? My favorite... I shouldn't admit this publicly, but my favorite part of the game... I don't know if you remember this, but there's a scene near the end where there's a fight scene in like a scrapyard. You're controlling 2 characters. One character's controlling this crane, and the other character's in the car the crane is picking up whilst one of these monsters is attacking. It's chaotic, it's great, and the theme of the level is the reason the monster gets attracted to your area anyway is because when one of the characters, Dylan, climbs into the crane, he accidentally turns the radio on the crane, and the radio's playing this rock music we got from Extreme Music. And then that plays so loudly, he's like, it's so loud, turn it off. And then, unbeknownst to them, the werewolf, I've spoiled it, it's a werewolf, starts coming from a distance to attack them. And I remember, right, what we ended up doing for this fight scene is that we brought back the rock music that was on the radio, and we made like a remixed version of the rock music mixed with Ian Livingstone's like score, mixed with some of my own orchestral stems, just to spice it up a little bit. In this like dynamic rock soundtrack that was like syncing with all these key points of the level. So the start of the level starts with like there's these motion activated floodlights that come on when someone's underneath them. And so the start of this part, there's a guy in the crane, Dylan, and it's all calm. He's trying to find something for a car or something so he can escape. And in the distance, one of the flashlights just comes on. Obviously because someone's coming towards you, and then another flashlight comes on, and then another one, and in the end, in the music, we had I recorded on my own guitar, and I EQ matched it to the guitar in the music track that we were using. So with each flashlight, you hear this massive wah, a guitar strum, and then next one we did another one, and it kept building. It was a really awesome moment.
Nice.
And then like it built up into this big heavy rock scene with these orchestral elements, and we had to do all these things. So like, you know, the scene ends when you drop the car on the werewolf and it gets crushed, and we had to do all this crazy stuff. So we synced it up so that it ended on this big natural rock sting just as a car lands, but also had to like make sure that the timings worked and the transitions worked. It was a real challenge, but it came together amazingly. And the worst thing is, right, when we were talking about this idea, I wanted to do something completely different. I was really pushing on not doing the rock music when it first came out. I was like, no, we should have original score. It makes way more sense. The rock music's too cheesy.
Yeah.
But no, Adele and Chris, the leads and directors, were like, no, do it the other way. Trust us. And when I did it, I'm like, oh damn, that is a lot better actually. But I'm really pleased with it. And it's funny that like the thing I'm most proud of in the game is something I was really adamantly against at the start. But I read comments online that it's people's like favorite part of the game and stuff. And I think the music helps a lot in that aspect, which is really awesome to see. And I just know that if it was up to me, it wouldn't have been anywhere near as good.
Yeah, it's always important to have people around you to ping pong ideas off and to
Absolutely.
also say like, I think we should do this. Like, this back and forth and this like different perspectives always, like if everyone works together, always brings out the best. And I remember the last. I don't remember it, of course, as vividly as you, because you did all the actual heavy lifting. But that was really fun. That was really fun. That was a really fun scene. Maybe also about your other project. You mentioned Shaun the Sheep. You worked on the Shaun the Sheep. That's pretty cool. Great. I mean, how does it feel to work on an IP that's like well known for many, many years?
It is the one I tell people about. It's like even my grandparents have heard of Shaun the Sheep, you know. They probably wouldn't have heard of the Quarry, even though it's super famous. But it's awesome. Again, I was an assistant composer to Dave Newby on Series 6, which was Shaun the Sheep Adventures from Mossy Bottom. And it was so much fun. Like it was, for the most part, we were just making music cues with lots of banjos and farmyard instruments in them. But, you know, working with Aardman Entertainment, they're like such an awesome animation studio. Like it was so funny. It was, I loved it. It was probably my favorite project to date. It was a really fast turnaround. We were probably making like 10, 15 cues a day of music and lots of edits as well. But it came together beautifully. It was so fun. I'm so proud of it. It's a great fun show that just like anyone can enjoy, no matter your age or what language you speak, because it's all non-verbal. It's awesome. That's a real career highlight of mine so far.
That's awesome. Yeah, I saw so many projects. Like I was scrolling through your site and was like, oh fuck, you worked on Planet Zoo, you worked on Dead Island 2, you worked on this and on this.
This is what I mean. I've most of these projects I've worked on for very little time. One project, right, I worked on a game called Sunless Skies.
Sunless Skies, yeah.
And I worked on it for a grand total of 4 hours.
But you got the credit?
Exactly right.
Nice.
I did like a DLC pack or something. It didn't take very long. But yeah, again, if you look at my list of credits, it's ridiculous. But honestly, like someone like say Greg Lester at my company as well, like he's been at the company just less than me, but a similar amount of time. But he's only got like 2 or 3 or 4 finished game credits just because he's been working on things long term. But we're doing the same amount of work, but mine's just spread across loads of projects, which definitely looks better on a CV. I have to say, even though it's probably not as useful.
That's cool. Yeah, anything else? Any nice stories you have from a project? Because just like you said, there's so many projects, and I don't know where you just work for 4 hours or for a couple of weeks. So
I guess I'll try to think of something about Foley, because it is the Field and Foley podcast, and Foley is something which, to be fair, I've only really grown a big appreciation of in the last kind of 3 or 4 years. Just in general, right? Foley really makes characters feel alive. I think without Foley, characters on the screen just feel like pixels. They feel like you're watching like flat images. But if you give them Foley, they feel real. They feel heavy. They feel like they've got weight. They feel like they're actual human characters, or whatever animal they would be or something. So that's honestly one of my biggest tips whenever we do showreel reviews is like add more weight and detail and depth to Foley. I think it's a really good tip. I personally really enjoy doing it at the moment. I remember we did a project recently where we had a character who wore a hazmat suit, I didn't have a hazmat suit, but I did have a shower curtain, and so I took my shower curtain down and wrapped myself around in it and was recording some like running and stuff in the shower curtain in my office, which actually turned out really well. So I was really proud of that one. It makes me think, actually, something that Greg and I learned together on the Quarry was we had so much great Foley recording for the Quarry, but we found like in the action scenes it was kind of not quite cutting through enough, some of the punches and kicks, and so we actually ended up layering kind of like those kind of like classic Hollywood style punches in a lot of places, and I think that really helped with like adding energy and excitement. It kind of showed that Foley doesn't have to be realistic all the time, as long as it has the right kind of emotion and storytelling to it. That really helps. Yeah, we really learned on that project that even though the Quarry was super realistic looking and had realistic audio with the ambience and the Foley, etc., I mean, that worked really, really well the entire way through. But for these like fight scenes where there's lots going on, adding these, I guess, unrealistic Foley punches and body hits and that kind of thing, I guess counterintuitively, you'd think it wouldn't work or it would detract from the style, but it actually really elevated it. You didn't really notice it so much as it being unrealistic because it's kind of what, you know, audiences have been trained to know what fights sound like in film. It was really an interesting kind of experiment, and it worked really, really well, and it sounds great now, in my opinion.
Yeah, that reminds me of myself when I bought an actual sword because I wanted to have realistic sword sounds, and realizing that realistic sword sounds are so boring.
Yeah,
it's like very, very
and
boring.
fork. Yeah.
And it doesn't. Yeah, it didn't work for the project at all because it needed to be like an old schooly thing. But it was good. It was good. And now I have a sword, so it's nice when I need realistic sounds or when I need something to show off. I have a sword on my wall. But now I've also got 2 Foley swords, which I'm really proud of. I let them. Let a guy make them in his forge, like he's a hobbyist, like blacksmith. And I asked him, like, hey, could you do this thing that I saw online? And now I have these 2 Foley swords, which are amazing. You can pick them up, and that sounds like an old school samurai sword. It's like, ching.
That's great.
So yeah, those are fun. Those are fun, and you can combine them with the real sword, so you can get some kind of interesting sounds out of that. But yeah, nice. It's like just like you said, and also with the thing with record everything unique for every sound is also something that brings you to a place where it's like you don't get this kind of groundedness, this kind of connectedness of all the sounds that fit together. And of course for video games you need a lot more variations of sounds because you hear so many more than in movies, but still you can get away, or you should even do a lot of sounds that you use multiple times just to like bring it back. And especially if the listener is like used to kind of sounds, they won't notice it is the same sound like 2 hours later. They will just like, it will just feel like it fits with the rest. So yeah, walking that line is always interesting, but that's also something that I learned pretty early on, which like I thought I needed to record everything. And now of course I'm using libraries for stuff that I can't record, like explosions or airplanes or something like that. And I try to like just make some special sounds and then just create a sound language that fits the project, which is I think the best thing.
You know, this is actually probably one of my most told tips for people new to game audio or just audio in general, and it completely goes against the point of a Field and Foley podcast. But it's to use more stuff from sound libraries. I think when you're starting out, there's like obviously recording stuff is great, it's fun, you get some great source material, etc. But a lot of people I know tend to try to record too much when they're starting out. And I think universities teach you to do that because all the assignments, like, you must make sure every single sound in this video has been recorded or synthesized yourself. And I think people come out of uni expecting that's what the real world is like. But in my experience, it's not. Like, libraries make up most of the stuff I do. Foley is the opposite, to be fair. Foley I record myself, or we get people to record because it's kind of like, you know, it's too difficult to create, like, you know 90 minutes of Foley for the character that wears a specific type of shoe on a specific type of ground. So that makes sense. But in general, like, I would definitely say using libraries is probably like, it's not like a cheat, but like it's probably the fastest way to get better at audio design, I think, or at least have a better show reel anyway. Maybe not so much in terms of improving skills. But yeah, sorry if you need to cut that because it's a Field and Foley podcast. Then you go for it.
No, it's totally fine. I want to paint the real picture, and it's also like just like you said, especially for like big projects like the Quarry, for example. If you would do every sound yourself, that's like the time it would take to make that it just isn't feasible. But I think what I personally like is always recording something unique for a project and mixing that in and using stuff that works from libraries. And I oftentimes find myself like just when I do, for example, like linear stuff like movies or like short films, not movies but short films, I go through it and I put just everything in there very quickly, just from libraries, from my stock sounds, from my own recorded sounds, everything I have lying around, just to fill out the scene and to see what is missing. And then I see what doesn't work, and then I record stuff. Or of course when I have something like very special, like a special kind of weapon or a special kind of event, or an ambience where it's like, I know, perfect place, then I record that. And yeah, I pride myself in always recording something unique for every project. So there's stuff that I record that will just be in this one project, and then I will just like throw it away, or like it will be in that project and that's it. But I think that's just a pet peeve of mine, because I just love recording. It's just an excuse for me to go out and record, probably.
No, that's cool. I think like giving yourself kind of limitations like that probably is a good way to find unexpectedly good results. I definitely don't do anything like that. There's definitely projects I don't need to do any recording at all. But in general, you're right. Like when I do my own recording, I always end up finding something I wouldn't have expected, which is one of the beauties of it, really. I actually have been doing way more recording recently. I've probably left it too late to speak about, but like I've started making like my own sound library recently, which is involving suddenly realizing in order to get layers to make sound effects, I need to use stuff I've recorded. And so I'm like, I don't have any recording. So I've been making an effort to do as much of that as possible. And it's not going well, to be honest. I have the old Zoom H1 and I don't have any wind shields on it. So like anything outside is very messy, but I'm getting there. It's been a fun experience so far. And I'm again, just learning, like recording different things, like trying to think outside the box, like things to record, things to synthesize as well. It's good. I am getting the recording bug again after a little hiatus, I think.
That's good. Just keep at it. You're gonna make some cool recordings.
Yeah.
And I have a spare recorder lying around, so if we see each other, I can like lend you my old one.
Yeah, please do.
It's better than the H1. Yeah. And you are on top of doing like all the audio things and like managing Airwiggles, you also organize some audio meetups. So we already established that you hate sleeping. So why and how do you like also organize like audio meetups? What does it for you?
The sad thing is, it's just to make some friends.
Oh.
No, I do really enjoy it. Again, when I started my journey in audio, and I went to my first university class at ACM in Guildford, and they said, by the way, you've got to do networking. I was like, can I swear on this podcast? Can I swear? Because I was thinking,
you can swear.
I was thinking, for fuck's sake, I'm such a socially awkward teenager. Like, I worked in a corner shop, not speaking to any of the customers. I hated speaking to strangers. I always have. I hated it. I hated it. And I was like, why, of all industries, have I chosen one where networking is so freaking important? But I thought, screw it. I've got to do it. Let's just get it over with. And I started going to networking events. And again, I didn't hate it, but it wasn't comfortable. Like, I was so awkward, sat in a corner, walking in, not knowing what to say to people, not knowing how to compose myself. I wasn't like, it wasn't bad or evil or anything. I was just like so out of place, and I was so awkward. And it took me like, I don't know, a good 10, 20 times before I started to feel more comfortable doing it. But I knew I had to do it, and I knew I had to be there, make friends, etc. And I'm really, really glad I did, because I made so many friends doing it. I met Greg Lester at a networking event, for instance, nice. As well as so many other friends I've got. In fact, basically all of my friends who I speak to the most, which are people on Airwiggles or people in sound, I met at some kind of event, basically. I knew it was important. And then kind of after I kept doing it loads and loads and loads, I realized I actually quite enjoyed it. And I quite enjoyed the idea of hosting them. I mean, initially I started hosting them because I was still looking for my first kind of big break in audio. And I thought whatever extra kind of but extra stuff I can do on the side is going to be a good thing, like on CVs and stuff. So if I say like on my CV, I host a meetup, then, it might help. So that was some of the reason I started doing it. But then just doing it and realizing I met so many amazing people. I also found like, because I was someone that hated going to networking events, well, not hated, but I was so nervous about going to networking events. I can kind of like quickly see when someone is feeling the same as I did. And I quite liked to be like, hey, don't worry, by the way, we're all really friendly. Like, I know what it's like, I know what it's like to kind of sit, not knowing what to say, etc. But you're totally welcome here. It's all very beginner friendly. There's no need to be concerned. And I feel like I made a lot of friends that way. I love I love the community so much, and I love meeting people and making friends with people and doing networking events. I do them in Guildford mainly, and I did run a Bristol one with my friend Jake Baston. He's kind of taken over that now mostly, and we also do lots of online meetups on Airwiggles, and we're also planning a big in-person meetup in the summer in London with Game Audio London. So like, yeah, I've basically, if there's a meetup in the south of England, it seems like I'm involved with it in some way. And I just love it. I just love meeting people, being friends with people. And I think now I'm kind of more confident in the speaking to people side of it. It makes it a lot less scary, but I only got there by doing as many as I physically could. I left my graduation ceremony early to go to a networking event in London. I got no work out of it. I made no friends out of it, but like, that's just what I was doing for like years of my life. I was going to everything I possibly could. It's funny, isn't it, how this industry works? Yeah, everyone else is getting a nice meal with their parents or whatever, but no, I was like, sorry, mum and dad, I've got to go. The train's in 5 minutes.
Well,
yeah,
that's passion. Yeah. Respect.
It might be too much, to be honest. I'm not necessarily recommending that, but yeah, I just did it so much, and I think it's got to the point now where I can't really live without it. Like, it's how I meet and stay in contact with so many of my close friends. And likewise, the very first networking event I ran in Guildford, I met Greg Lester, and like, that just goes to show what a amazing thing it can do if you get lucky. I've been to so many networking events, I've met no one interesting, not a diss on them, just like no one that really like I gelled with that much. But, you know, sometimes when you go, you just meet people who can get you work or take you places or just support you in your journey for the rest of your life or for the next like 5-10 years at least. And that's worth it to me.
Absolutely. That's a good advice to just like, even if you're awkward, try it, because after all, we're just all audio nerds, so you will have something to talk about. So I didn't believe it, but I've had people tell me that like I seem quite confident speaking to people. Yeah,
I don't know what they're talking at. No, I'm really not. And again, you don't know what I was like, honestly. Yeah. There's a few people in the audio industry in the UK who probably remember what I was like the first few times I came to meet up, and I'm really praying they don't ever like talk about that, because I just like I was just so awkward. I would just make like terrible jokes that made no sense constantly because I didn't know what else to do. It didn't make any, and I was the most strange person to meet at a networking event. And I really hope they've all forgotten that it was me. But when people say like, how'd you speak to so many people, or how do you appear so confident? It's like, I'm not confident in the slightest. I don't know how I've managed to trick you all into thinking I know what I'm talking about, but believe me, I feel awkward on the inside still, all the time.
So imposter syndrome in all areas.
Yeah, absolutely.
Even in the confidence. Yeah. Speaking of awkward jokes, I have the punchline to the time travel joke I'm going to tell, and it doesn't make sense to you, but we will record your episode next, which will air before that, so it's going to be interesting. So the punchline is, what's the worst part about time traveling jokes? That's the punchline.
Okay, I wonder what the setup is. I'll never guess.
Okay, so for people that haven't heard the episode yet, you have it in the wrong order. You need to listen to the other episode, B01 first. One other thing I also wanted to mention and talk to you about, because it fascinates me as well, is you have a guilty pleasure, big-ass spreadsheets.
Oh, freaking love a spreadsheet.
Yes.
Oh, conditional formatting, data validation. Oh, you're talking my language.
You know, I used to hate spreadsheets, and then I started making my own for things I needed, like for financial planning or for projects. And then I was like, oh, fuck, yeah, it's kind of fun. So maybe for people that don't understand the fascination about spreadsheets, can you like explain what is so cool?
Okay, to work in audio, there's so many assets and lists and bits of feedback and just everything that gets completely lost if you don't log it. So you have to put it in some kind of log, and you can choose to write it on paper like a maniac, or write a Google Doc or something, or put it in your notes, or you can do the smart thing and put it in a Google Sheet spreadsheet, which your whole team can access. And you can have these little tick boxes that you can tick from, like, you know, not started, in progress, done, and you can make them color coordinated. So they've got like they're green if they're done. And it's really satisfying ticking them off. You can have different columns. You can have all the file names. You can use that to import into Wise. It's it's the best feeling ever. You should sit. I'm not going to show them because it's got information I can't share, but you should see some of the spreadsheets like that Greg and I make for again, some of the Airwiggles stuff has the best spreadsheets ever behind the scenes. When you start adding like the thick borders around the key bits and then the thin borders as well.
Yes, I do that as well.
A work of art.
Oh man,
I'm very picky about my spreadsheets, I have to say.
Yeah.
But yeah, like I've got a style, and also like I'm colorblind, and so I have to make sure my spreadsheets are very careful with their color choice. I've got some people give me notes where they like put some text in red and some in black. It's like I can't read that, but my spreadsheets, you don't have that problem. It's so clear what everything is. It's so honestly, it's a work of art.
Yeah, the spreadsheet Picasso. I see.
Yeah,
that's awesome. Yeah, and I think the only other question that I have left that I always ask my guests, and I'm pretty sure you know already what's coming, is what is the first sound you ever recorded and why did you record it?
Yes, so I have a funny story for this one. So I was thinking about this before because I knew you were going to ask it to me. And first point, I don't remember what the first sound I recorded is. I don't remember. So sorry, rubbish answer. But I do remember one of the first sounds I recorded was when I was in university. I was at ACM in Guildford. And it was our first kind of like course assignment, and we basically just had to record some sounds and put them into a video. I think it was like a clip from a James Bond trailer or something. And in order to do this, we got given the General 6000 library, so that was most of it. But they also said you get bonus points for recording your own stuff and putting it in the video. So I was like, great, let's do some recording. And so one of the bits in the scene was this waterfall, right? And so I was like, I can find a waterfall, that'd be easy to record. And so I went out of my university, and again, I was in central Guildford. If people are listening know the area, I kind of walked out down the river, down a canal, towards like the kind of grassy area where the canoe boat shop is. And there's this like big, not like a water, but like a water lock where like the rivers are on two separate levels, and there's a bit where you go over this bridge, water's flowing down it. It's kind of like constant noise basically, but I thought, great, I can get super close because I'm like a meter away from it. Perfect, I'll record this. So I recorded it, I took it home, put it in my session. And it was it sounded right. But something I forgot to mention is that before this, I also found my temporary sound I had in it was a waterfall sound I found from freesound.com. And so I was thinking that sounds not very good. I'll replace it with my own recording. And so I got this own recording. But then I was listening to them. I was like, this waterfall sounds like tonally, it sounds exactly the same as the waterfall from freesound.com. And so I looked up the sound from freesound.com. I checked it out where it was. You'll never guess it. It's the exact same waterfall.
Oh,
the exact same one. In the entire world, it was the exact same waterfall.
That's amazing, man. That is amazing.
I couldn't believe it. I'm assuming it was another ACM student or something. But yeah, I was like, no wonder it sounds the same. I thought I was going crazy. But no, I just... basically,
that's so cool.
Upscaling a Freesound MP3.
Yeah, you could have thought like, okay, apparently most of the waterfalls sound the same, but you went the extra mile like, nah, I don't think so.
It was just too similar. It was just too similar.
Very, very cool. Yeah. Yeah, that's something like waterfalls. I'm a big fan of waterfalls. I'm a bit of a waterfall sound nerd, which is a very, very niche of a niche. But what I, for example, really, really hate in games, and I know why they do this, but what I really hate is when you have an RPG game like Skyrim and you're next to a waterfall and you can talk in a normal voice with another person. And it's like, no, there's this like 50-meter roaring waterfall. It should drown everything. You should have it like at least a bit realistic. Yeah. And it's like, it always irks me when I have that, I don't know. I hate that.
It's like when you see characters talking in a nightclub in a film. They're just talking around the regular voices, like, what's happening here?
And the music is drowned out.
Yeah. It's funny how often that happens. I remember, sorry, going off topic. I remember in The Social Network, they have a scene where they get that perfectly right. Like they're actually like, the two characters are like screaming at the top of their lungs to be heard.
Yes.
Which is really satisfying when you see it done correctly.
Yeah.
It's funny.
Yeah, the sound nerd stuff. Oh, very cool. I think it's a very cool note to end it on. Wrong sound. So the only thing left to do is like, do you have any upcoming projects you want to shout out or anyone?
You've probably seen this by now, but Airwiggles Audio Conference is coming back in like approximately 20 days from now. It's going to be from the 10th of June to the 15th of June. If you didn't know, it's a free online audio conference on airwiggles.com. Everything's entirely for free, and we have I'm not sure if I should say how many talks we have in case it changes, but I'm going to say it anyway. We have 50 different talk slots, I believe. They're all amazing. They're not announced at the time I say this, but I think they'll be announced by the time you hear this. So you should go and have a look. It's going to be awesome. There's going to be so much awesome information and networking possibilities, and it's all going to be online forever for free. It's going to be great. What you're doing, still listen to this. Why are you not there right now? Go and sign up. Go and find some events you want to check out. It's going to be awesome. I'm really excited for it, and it's going to be really useful as well, I hope. So yes, that's awesome. That's my plug.
Perfect. So thank you again for being on the show. It was a pleasure, and I hope to see you again on this show.
Absolutely. Just let me know when and where. Maybe even last week.
Yes. Awesome. Looking for more audio-related podcasts to listen to? We're part of the Audio Podcast Alliance, featuring a hand-picked selection of the very best podcasts about sound. Be sure to hear the latest episodes from our friends in the community at audiopodcast.org. And if you've enjoyed this episode, please consider supporting on patreon.com/fieldandfoley or ko-fi.com/fieldandfoley, where you gain early access to episodes in lossless format and can submit questions for our guests. Thank you for listening.